Show some respect. Find out why that's important in this episode of 5 Minutes Closer. I'm Vaughn Weatherford, and this is 5 Minutes Closer. For the next 5 minutes, let's explore some biblical truths and apply them to your life. No podcast, including this one, can transform your life or give you what you really need. Only Jesus can do that. You can find out why in what I've called the first five episodes of 5 Minutes Closer. Each following episode explores scriptural truths that, if you follow them, will bring you 5 minutes closer to the person God created you to be. Let's see if we can get you 5 minutes closer. Those reading Peter's letter probably express surprise at what he writes in verses 13 through 17 of chapter 2. He tells them to honor their political leaders. Here's what the Bible says beginning in verse 13. Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. Remember, Peter writes these words to those living under the forced occupation of the Roman Empire, ruled by emperors, governors, and government officials who were some of the most corrupt the world has ever known. They persecuted believers. Some, reading Peter's words, had lost family members to execution at the hand of Roman officials. How could believers honor Roman authorities? And what could that possibly mean for us today? Notice that Peter is very specific in his wording. He writes, be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution. Their submission to public leaders was an outgrowth of their submission to Christ. Peter provided an example of this when authorities examined him in Acts chapter 4, verses 19 and 20. There the Bible records what happened. But Peter and John answered them, whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must judge. For we cannot but speak what we have seen and heard. Standing before corrupt officials, Peter was not disrespectful or spiteful, but still stand firm in his faith. We can honor those who are in authority over us, even leaders with whom we disagree. The freedoms we enjoy in the United States are a blessing. Our system of government is the best in the world. No other nation provides the freedoms and opportunities we have. Unfortunately, sometimes we misuse our freedoms. The Constitution guarantees our freedom of speech, but nowhere in the Constitution are we required to be hateful and spiteful with those with whom we disagree. We can disagree, but we can do so without being disagreeable. We seem to live in a time where the prevailing thought is that the only way to get ahead is to put someone else down. Peter could have done so in his day too. However, he knew Christ gave him a higher calling. He chose to honor those in authority, and by doing so, to honor God. In verses 16 and 17, Peter describes how Christ calls us to respect and honor others. There he writes, live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the emperor. Peter calls for believers to love each other, just as Jesus called us to do. We are to fear God. As we honor God above all, we will love those that he loves, and we will respect those he has placed in authority. This leads to Peter's strangest statement, to honor the emperor. Remember, Peter is not describing a democratically elected leader. Peter didn't vote for this guy. He's not even talking about a good emperor. The emperor at the time Peter wrote this letter was none other than Nero, one of the most corrupt emperors in the history of Rome, and that's saying something. Nero was despicable in every sense of the word. He killed at least 2 of his wives, one of whom he literally kicked to death. He brutally executed political opponents. He blamed Christians for a fire that he set in Rome, and then he had Christians impaled and burned along the roads leading to the city as punishment for a crime they didn't commit. This is the guy Peter says to honor. He was not excusing Nero's sins. However, Peter provides an important truth for us today. If he prayed for and even showed respect to a guy like Nero, we should pray for and honor anyone in authority over us today. That doesn't mean we will always agree. It doesn't mean that we should not speak out against atrocities or wrongs. It doesn't mean that we should not seek to elect candidates who follow godly principles. It does mean that we can and should always be respectful. We can always pray. Paul writes the same thing in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, where the Bible says, "First of all, then I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way." Did your candidates win in the last election cycle? If they did, or even if they didn't, you can respect and honor those who are in authority over you. You can agree and disagree in a way that honors Christ. And now, you're 5 minutes closer. My prayer is that these 5 minutes have challenged you, inspired you, and caused you to consider applying God's message for your life from His Word. To find out more, visit our website at 5minutescloser.com. Join me next time to see if we can get you 5 minutes closer.